Hi, it's Michael Kerr here, presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, I interview a fellow small business owner or an expert, and they share their stories, their lived experiences, the wins and the losses, and their best advice to help you, the listener, get the most you can from your own business. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. And thanks also to Kerr Capital, supporters of the show. Welcome into another edition of Small Business Banter Community Radio and Podcast. I'm very pleased to welcome in Jill Weeks, and we're going to be chatting about retirement, but in the sense of all the different ways you can do it and how you might incorporate a business. Jill's an expert author, occasional radio presenter and guest on all topics retirement. So firstly, a very big welcome to you, Jill. Thanks for taking time to come in.
Thanks very much for inviting me, Michael.
I think that what I talked about is the themes for today. I'm really intrigued as to the way retirement seems to be evolving as a concept, and we're looking forward to getting all your thoughts. Just by way of introduction, fascinating mix of academic educational experience, Jill, a major in psychology, a diploma in financial planning and a diploma of teaching. That is a really intriguing mix of educational background, and I can see why all of them apply to the kind of work you do. So anyway, do you just want to give us a couple of minutes about Jill Weeks and the work you do, please?
Oh, yes. Well, I started off in education, and, I did all the usual sort of things and lots of different things. And then after quite a few years, moved into sort of the financial area for just a short time, I suppose. And around about that same time, my husband had sold a business, worked for the New People for quite a few years, and we both decided we'd take a year off. I suppose it was a gap year. Yeah. And we would travel around Australia to write the very first book on where to retire in Australia. So we did that in 12 months or more.
And was the trip about with the idea that you would write the book, or did the book happen while you were on the trip?
No, we actually went out. We actually planned to write the book as we went. So we had, very, very specific things we needed to look at, and so we kept on writing that. We wrote and we travelled, and we wrote and we travelled, and we met lots of people, and some of them are what I call my Where to Retire ambassadors right around Australia, who like to promote their particular area, and then. One of the questions we asked, we had about 20 questions at each place we went to, we'd say, look, if you retired here, what could you do? Could you run a small business, a profitable hobby? Is there work in the area? Do you get support from the council, the Chamber of Commerce, the business network, whatever it might be? And we got referred to so many people who were actually so-called retirees, or they had moved to the area not to retire but to do something different. And then that's when we thought, well, hang on a minute, let's start collecting case studies. So we collected 101 and we wrote them up in Retire Busy, which was our sort of writing two books at once, I suppose. So we went on from there, and then, we worked for various companies, with staff, seminars. We provide content for different companies and organisations. We've done road shows for banks, superannuation funds, accountants, financial planners around Australia who'd like to have their clients educated as well. And I run a website as well, and I love hearing people's stories and where are some great places to retire, or even if you're not going to retire, maybe a tree change, a sea change, or a me change. So that's basically it. And along the way, I've had a ABC regional radio segment. I had it before COVID for about 14 years, I suppose. And then, I do various radio segments now just on lifestyle. So I don't concentrate or don't comment at all on the financial side.
Yeah.
I'll leave that to the financial planners.
Yeah.
But definitely looking at the non-financial lifestyle things, which I think are in some ways just as important as the finances.
Look, they sure are. And today in this discussion, we're going to kind of span a fair bit of territory, and I'm particularly interested in one of your books, The Retire Busy. That one you just spoke about, 101 case studies for people that have kind of, I think, largely integrated some form of employment or activity with going past whatever the age of retirement was. So that's something I'm really intrigued to discuss. But can we just start with, it seems to me that retirement today is very different to what it was 20, 30 years ago. Is that
It certainly is, yes. Definitely, because I think there's a lot more options now. We've got a lot more access to technology, to digital items as well, and also the yearning for people to do something a little bit different. Maybe they're not going to go back to work, boots and all, maybe they're not necessarily going to sort of just say, I'm going to play golf all the time, or as I say, join the fish more and do little company. I think there's more people sort of looking to do something a little bit different, and also they're saying, well, look, I just don't want to do one thing, as they say, lopsided leisure in retirement. And like in previous years, of course, people worked right up till 65 or maybe a bit longer, and then they sort of said, right, that's it, I'm pulling the pin, I'm out. Whereas I think there's a lot more options now, and you can actually see differences starting to appear in terms of there's a lot more retirement coaches around, or retirement mentors that help coach people into retirement, which 20, 30 years ago, that would have been unheard of. And I think, people are sort of saying, look, I can kind of work from anywhere. If I had a little profitable hobby or a home-based business, or I could do freelance work, you can almost do it anywhere, providing, it's something you can do via your computer.
Yeah, so I wonder if even the term retirement needs a rethink, really. I mean, I deal with a lot of small business owners, and the conversations I have are very skewed to them, and there's always there's many owners that get to a point where they think they need to sell and inverted commas retire, and often find that when they get close to the end of the process of selling and realise that without that business there's not much else, and they haven't done any of that sort of personal planning for a life after business. And so it seems like there are ways. I encourage owners to think about the personal aspects of retirement. So what are you going to do afterwards with your time? Are you better to actually stay in touch, keep a role, or have something to do with the business ongoing? Because we're not giving financial advice here, but often, if you've got a healthy small business, what you get when you take that money and put it into to a retirement savings plan or a self-managed super isn't what you might get out of a good performing small business. So it's so that for those small business owners, do you have conversations with them and see them have a different set of challenges to, say, an employee coming up to retirement?
Oh, very much so. Actually, I just read a statistic the other day that said 60% of business owners say they would sell or get out, exit their business if their finances are okay. But more than 60% say they worry about missing their role in the business. So they're talking about relevance deprivation there, you know, building an identity. You've got an identity, and of course, once you've retired, how many people do you ask when you say, what do you do? And they say, I used to, you know, no, what do you do now? You know, so the idea of a title is incredibly important. And if you're an employee, there's various ways that you may retire. You may retire at a certain age, but you also may be made redundant. You don't have a choice, for example. So, you know, it's a DCM, don't come Monday type of situation, which can really rattle retirement plans, of course. But, yeah, small business owners, it's very, very difficult to say, well, when are you going to leave and how are you going to leave? And sometimes I think some small business owners I've met don't really look at the options they have. You know, maybe they could stay in their business, you know, maybe in more of a strategic role, or, you know, they don't really look at their priorities. Is there a priority to get your money out? Is your priorities to keep on working a little bit? You know, teasing out some options, I think, is really, really important for small business owners. And if you've had, particularly if you, I guess if one lady told me she's worked with a lot of small business, and she said the founders are the ones that have the greatest difficulty in, you know, exiting their business, because they've built something up. And, you know, it's sort of theirs, and it's their baby, and it's been their life for so many years.
It certainly does. It's purpose, it's identity, it's power and prestige. You know, there's a lot of things, and none of that's, you know, that all of that's positive. But, yes, you're coming up to the point where I think also coupled with the fact that to create a successful small business takes a certain level of energy and skills and experience, and I don't think that turns off just when you're at the same time as you might decide to sell the business, and that's the big yearning gap. And playing golf, walking the dog, travel, I think it sometimes or often only fulfills part of the personal need to be engaged. So. So I think we're agreeing, you know, this concept of retirement is very, very different. In the book, do you want to talk about, to give that a bit of flavour, some of those 101 examples? What we'd like to do is kind of motivate people to think about different ways to, inverted commas, retire. So are there a couple that stand out for you that were really motivating?
Oh, there's so many. But one thing that I think that was really interesting, because you hear about people say, oh, it's my age, or, you know, I'll never get another job or whatever. Well, one guy that used to run his own company, it was like a manufacturing type of business, he had a voluntary job with a service club, you know, as he, you know, did a lot of work for it once he retired. But then he got talking to his buddies, and this is another tip: never give up your networks. Make sure you've got lots of networks in retirement. So he got talking to one of his buddies from in another business, and he's saying, I'm just so busy, I'm just flat out, can't keep an eye on the staff, can't keep an eye on orders, you know, the whole thing. And he said, oh, look, you wouldn't be interested in an hour or two a week, would you? And he said, oh, yeah, I would actually. Anyway, so fast forward, and this man has established a business called locum management, or babysitting your business. So he would go into anyone's business and either just, you know, look at the mail or bank the checks, or, you know, as if you do that these days, but, you know, that sort of financial sort of things. And he's actually involved his wife as well. So she was involved as well. Well, the business became so busy, the two of them, that they hardly had time to go to Queensland. They used to like to go to Queensland for a couple of months a year. And they were regarded as special because they was deemed to be trustworthy and confidential, and they had skills and they had experience, and particularly people skills. So that's a fantastic, I thought that was absolutely wonderful idea. Another one was a lady called Biddy Naylor, and she's since, I believe, sold this business during COVID for a reason I'll tell you in a minute. She was a social worker for many years, but she loved to travel, and she thought, well, if I could only marry the two together, I could, have a business. And she's got great people skills. So she started off having walking tours in France and Italy for Australian women. And then she was going through travel agents. So you'd book through a travel agent and you'd meet Biddy over in France or Italy. And it was just women only. And she called it Shirley Valentine after the movie Shirley Valentine there. But similarly, there's another lady I thought did a fantastic job in her retirement. She had a daughter who relocated to Hobart, and she went to see her daughter, and she thought, well, I'll come and live here too. So she did, and she had a very senior job in a management company in Germany, and she went for job after job in Tasmania, no luck at all. And finally, she sort of said, well, tell me why. And one person said, well, look, it's your age and your accent. Yeah. What? And she sort of went, what? And so rather than getting too upset, she said, oh, well, I'll just do my own thing. So she started off taking walking tours around Salamanca Place. Yeah. And that was a great success. But then she built that up to have about, I think she had about 10 people working for her. And she also had I think it was a retreat, sometimes a retreat that she'd take companies or, staff members in Tasmania as well. But she said, you know what? The people, her clients or customers that came to do her tours, she said they love my age and my accent, and they were actually...
Right. It became all of a sudden it flipped and became...
Yeah, so they were German retirees.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
So that's, there's lots and lots of exciting stories, but there's just a couple.
Yeah. And look, on today's edition of Small Business Banter Community Radio and podcast, talking retirement and the new definition of new possibilities of retirement with Jill Weeks. Jill, just before this concept of a business locum, in the work I do, there's, I think it was, I'll come back to Biddy, by necessity had to change gears and do something different, to adapt. And it's very much the same, with business owners who have a business and can see the point, see that time ahead where they want to do different things but don't necessarily want to completely detach themselves or just sell the business. In many cases, you can't sell businesses. I don't know who buys these things. So the potential or the opportunity to stay in it, but in a different way, is becoming more and more of the sort of advice I give. It's not binary. You must sell or you must hold. There are different ways to manage a business from a different location, and it's just become so much more evident through COVID. But this concept of a business locum, I think, has got real legs. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
You mean the man that was from the manufacturing background?
Yeah, who kind of was able to, because what he's enabled the owner of that business to do is to take a temporary break from the business. Where sometimes that leads to the point where an owner says, "There's no one else can do this. I'm going to sell. I'm out of here," and it can often be the worst decision they ever make. So it takes a lot of effort and planning and confidence in getting the right people. But this idea that you could leave it in the hands of somebody else for a period of time.
Yeah, and I mean, he didn't really sort of walk in and say, right, this is how we're going to operate, because the owner was usually there or maybe away for a day or a week or whatever it was, doing whatever. Yeah. So it gave the owner also time to reflect and work on the business, not in it.
Yes.
And also, I just think the idea that, this man said, well, we were liked because of our skills, experience, age. We to stereotype anyone younger, we weren't going to say we're sick or we're whatever, all those negative stereotypes that you have for young people as for old people. But that and they said because we'd had such a network within our sphere, that was something that really went to it. So we didn't actually cut off any ties once he got out of his own business.
Yeah.
And that was really, really important. And also, word went round. He just didn't work for one company. Word went round and, it wasn't, sometimes they went out of their comfort zone. It wasn't necessarily manufacturing, it might have been retail, but the same sort of thing. And, sort of customer service and talking to people and all the things that a business may not always have time for. So, and he could read a balance sheet and, all that sort of thing as well. And, it just was a fantastic idea. That's one of my passions, I suppose, is to try and get people to, look at the options, network. I know there's various employment agencies that say they focus on older people, and I know there's one, particularly the owner of a business up near Coffs Harbour called Silver Temps. He places people just for part-time work, retirees mainly. But I think definitely there should be something else, a bigger bank of people who say, these are my skills, or this is what I can do, in terms of...
There's no barriers. Maybe it's some education and confidence around, to do it. But Aussie Post enable their licensees and franchisees to depart the business for a period of time. They bring in locums, and that's a very specific set of experiences you need to run one of those. They're pretty busy, but nevertheless, doctors probably own the term locum or health professionals, but the concept is incredibly relevant. On a recent episode, I had Katrina Myers, who runs Barham Avocados, and the theme of that interview was with her husband and 4 children. They took a long break overseas, and they've got a significant agricultural business that they own and run, but they were able to, and it took quite a few years of planning, but they didn't want their kids to miss out on the opportunity to travel with them when they were, in their whatever. There was a good age group good age bracket for everyone to go together. So they did a lot of planning, and then they left the business in the hands of a team, and they came back. And the business, they learned a lot about how robust the business was, and it wasn't like a binary decision, or we won't travel because we've got a business, or we'll sell the business and go travel. It was a really good outcome, and we also got talking about this concept of locum business owners. So
it's a fantastic concept, and particularly if you're running a farm like that, I imagine they'd be a bit apprehensive initially. Oh gosh, does everyone know how to grow or how to look after avocados? Yeah. So that's a great story.
Yeah, it is. Look, it was really, really wonderful. And you also started to talk about the Coffs Harbour Employment Agency, Silver Temps, was it?
Yeah, Silver. Yeah. I think it's just Silver Temp or Temps. And so you see various ones popping up, but this one is particularly dedicated to part-time workers, and I think it's mainly to do with office work
and remote office works.
Well, I think he was going into all of that. I haven't spoken to him for quite a few months, but I'll have a look and see what he's on about. So I think those sort of things are really important to say, well, look, let's not lose our skills or experience. Let's sort of really do something as well. But sometimes, people do something completely different. I've got a friend in America, and where he was living, there was, if you had horses, and because he had quite a big place, you had to make sure you cleaned up the manure. There was to be no manure left in this particular county. So he went from IT, being an IT manager, to what he called output management, CEO. and he did
it's his own title, yeah.
Yeah, he did so well with that business, and he sold, and he's now looking to do something else. So sometimes it's not always staying in the same business, but he had a passion for horses, and that's the other thing I think is really important if you're looking to start a small business, perhaps. Is to look at your passions. What do you really like doing? Because there's no use saying, oh, I'm just keeping on, or, I've got to do this. There may be something, a hobby or some other idea you've developed that really takes your passion, and, you go forward with that.
Yeah, well, look, I think it's when you talked about having an active network, that's so crucial to all of this, because it can can introduce you to opportunities, and it can motivate you and point you to some really good resources. But yeah, it really is very much a case of thinking outside of the box, recognizing that if you do want to transition, say from even a senior employee to in inverted commas retiree, doing something on the side there are opportunities around to educate yourself on what it's like to to become a small business owner, or to craft create a hobby or a sideline. So it's so much about taking in all this information, which you clearly are at the centre of. I mean, you've got three. I know there are different editions, but there were three publications you put out. One was, I think, essentially where's a good place to live.
Where to retire in Australia. Yeah. Yeah,
and then there was Retire Busy, which I'm not sure where it came in the sequence, and then the third. What was the third one? It was
21 ways to retire. I wrote that and I interviewed 21 Australians from different backgrounds. And for example, there was a guy who was in, some people may remember this, a TV show called Sunny Side Up, way back. He was a dancer, and he danced lots and lots of places. And he had to retire because of, arthritis and all sorts of other things.
Right.
He got a job with the Melbourne City Council with their parks and gardens, and just loved it. He said, it was just absolutely fabulous. And then it sort of went through a whole lot of other, very different people. And I even interviewed one of the secretaries of BHP, and he had to retire because, and it was almost, they offered him another job, and he said, no, I've been with you since I was about 15 or 16. You're not going to find me a filing job in the corner.
That's all we've got time for today. I hope you enjoyed that discussion with Jill. It will continue next week, and Jill will dig a little bit deeper on some of the people she's met along the way, the inspirations for different and better retirement. She also talks about a couple of the things to look out for that can make a retirement not so great. We get into the importance of network and the value of work in a non-financial sense. So that is all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. I continue to be inspired, bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. If you want to listen to any past episode, jump onto your podcast platform of choice and search Small Business Banter. There you will find a diverse and fascinating collection of small business owners and experts openly discussing and sharing their experiences. For any of the links, resources or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact me, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And it would be great to have you tune in the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.